Torture and Confession, The Dark History of Interrogation. Welcome to Ginny Greaves. For most of modern history, justice systems have relied on evidence, witnesses, forensic science, and careful investigation. But for centuries, the most powerful proof in a criminal trial was something much simpler: a confession. And if a suspect refused to confess, many authorities believed there was only one solution: torture. Across medieval Europe and other parts of the world, torture was not merely tolerated in criminal investigations. In some cases, it was officially authorized by courts as a method of extracting the truth. What followed was one of the darkest chapters in the history of criminal justice: the belief that pain revealed truth. In medieval legal systems, confession was often considered the strongest possible proof of guilt, but suspects did not always confess voluntarily. Authorities therefore developed systems designed to break resistance. Judges sometimes authorized what was known as judicial torture, a process in which a suspect would be subjected to controlled physical suffering until they admitted their crime. The logic behind it was deeply flawed. Authorities believed that an innocent person would endure pain rather than confess to something they had not done, while the guilty would eventually reveal the truth. In reality, many innocent people confessed simply to end the agony, the rack, and the machinery of pain. Among the most infamous torture devices was the rack. The rack was a wooden frame with rollers at both ends. A prisoner's wrists and ankles were tied to the rollers, and the device slowly stretched the body by pulling the limbs in opposite directions. As the tension increased, muscles tore and joints dislocated. Despite the brutality of the method, the rack was widely used in several European legal systems for centuries. In England, it appeared in high-profile political interrogations during the Tudor period. One of the most notorious examples involved the interrogation of Guy Fawkes after the failed Gunpowder Plot of 1605. Records show that Fawkes was gradually subjected to increasingly severe torture in order to reveal the identities of his fellow conspirators. The surviving signature he later provided appears shaky and distorted, believed to be the result of injuries sustained during the interrogation. The Iron Maiden and the mythology of torture. Some devices associated with torture have become legendary. One of the most famous is the so-called Iron Maiden, a metal coffin lined with spikes that would pierce the body when the door was closed. However, historians now believe many Iron Maidens displayed in museums were actually constructed centuries later as curiosities rather than authentic medieval devices. This highlights an important point about torture history. While genuine torture certainly occurred, later generations sometimes exaggerated or mythologized the brutality of earlier periods. Witch trials and the collapse of justice. One of the most disturbing examples of torture in criminal investigations occurred during the European witch trials of the 16th and 17th centuries. Thousands of people, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft and subjected to interrogation methods designed to force confessions. Victims were often pressured to name accomplices, leading to a chain reaction of accusations that spread across entire communities. Because torture almost guaranteed confession, the process created its own evidence. Once the system began, it was extremely difficult to stop. The slow end of judicial torture. By the 18th century, Enlightenment thinkers began to challenge the use of torture in criminal justice. Philosophers and legal reformers argued that pain did not reveal truth. It simply forced people to say whatever would make the suffering stop. Gradually, legal systems across Europe began abolishing torture as a method of investigation. The rise of forensic science, modern policing, and evidence-based trials replaced confession as the center of criminal prosecution. The legacy of a darker system. Today, torture is widely condemned under international law and human rights conventions. Yet its history reminds us how dramatically justice systems have evolved. For centuries, the pursuit of truth in criminal investigations relied not on evidence, but on pain. And the consequences were devastating. Because when suffering becomes the tool of justice, the line between truth and false confession can disappear entirely.